acknowledgements again.
So we will call to order the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. This is January 29th, 5:30. We'll start out by taking roll.
Benayeg, Johnson,
Present.
Higal, Yang,
Present.
Hayes,
Present.
Pischler, Kanowski.
Present.
And we will move on to the land acknowledgement, and that will be read by Anne Marie.
We are gathered here on the lands that were originally home to the Menominee and Ho-Chunk nations. We honor the Menominee and Ho-Chunk communities and are grateful for their stewardship of the land and waters. We acknowledge these ancestral grounds as sacred and remember the complex history of settler colonialism on these lands and the effects that persist today. We commit to a restorative and healing relationship of the original inhabitants and our community.
Thank you. Next, we will have the mission statement read by Marina.
The mission of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee is to create a more welcoming, connected, and equitable Oshkosh by consciously including the richness and complexities of marginalized voices in its planning and function.
Thank you very much. Next up on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the October 23rd, 2023 meeting. I'll take a motion and a second.
I move to approve.
Second. And discussion, if any? None? We'll vote.
Johnson,
Aye.
Yang,
It's been a while.
Yes.
Hayes,
Aye.
Kanowski.
Aye.
And moving to the citizen statements, did we have, no.
Nope, we do not have anyone registered for citizen statements,
And any public comment on agenda items? No one
nor do we
registered?
have anyone registered for public comments.
Next up on the agenda would have been the Winnebago Housing Authority presenter, however, today was.
Yes, unfortunately, due to the reschedule, they were not able to make it, but we will definitely get them back on the agenda soon.
Perfect, thank you. And next, we have our fine city manager here to give us some information on ARPA.
Well, thank you, both chairperson and council member Hayes. In your packet, there is a sample not a sample, it's an application as well as some background regarding a solicitation we're doing for the remainder of our ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act. The city received approximately $20.5 million in ARPA funds, and the council had directed that approximately 25% of those funds be allocated to nonprofit entities and non-infrastructure purposes, essentially something non-direct city related. To date, the council's allocated, and that, I think that's not quite right. That's 2.775 480, leaving approximately 2,350,000. I know that number is correct, but so $2.3 million. The real trick here is that the funds need to be committed by the end of 2024. That doesn't necessarily mean spent. The expenditures can go until the end of 2026, but we want to make sure that these funds are allocated. And the reason is let's just say that Group A is funded, approved by council, and then after January 1, 2025, they say, oh gosh, we're not going to be able to spend all of it, or we can't do any of it, here's it back. We cannot reallocate those funds after that, and we would lose them. So what we want to do is, and I say, preference to funds that can be expended, but that's not rock solid. It's really more understanding that whoever receives the funds understands we will spend it by the end of 2026, or do it in a judicious, quick fashion. All the recipients so far have pretty much spent all of their money. I'm working out with one group that they did something different, but it was in keeping with the grant, so they're just doing little things differently. But everybody has effectively spent the money that we've given out so far. So the idea is to, the council's direction way back when was to talk to the DEI committee about what we're doing. So I felt this was appropriate. And I don't think, and me, you've been on the board since day one, I don't recall even coming during that time. So this is actually my first time, so my apologies for not having done it earlier. But the idea is to identify groups that are either underserved and could use some assistance, particularly if they were impacted through COVID. It's not an absolute requirement, but certainly that is something that the council had said, we want to give preference to those groups. And the funds that were used so far were, I'd say mostly groups that were impacted by COVID, some differently than others. So I think the council would like to get me to solicit more funds. I do have a due date of March 1st, but that became an issue as time went on. We'll set a March 1st deadline, but I think we need to take a look at what applications we have. I've gotten a couple inquiries already with what publicity that we've done already. And the major question is, do we have to have it spent by the end of the year? It's like, well, tell me you're gonna spend it regardless of when you spend it, as long as you have it spent by the end of 26. That's probably been the biggest question I've gotten. The other question I've gotten is, will you support operating funds? And that's kind of a tricky thing. There's no requirement that it only be used for capital. Most of the first round funds, all but 130,000 were capital. But that's because that was a very easy way to say, I can spend this money and I can show you something very rock solid. But the one that we did, for example, we gave AdvoCap $130,000, and it was all operating. The reason we chose to do that is because AdvoCap had access to funds to do rental and mortgage assistance to people, and we essentially helped cover the administrative costs so they could leverage those dollars, and they probably leveraged it on like a 10-to-1 basis. So for every dollar we gave them, they got another 10. It made perfect sense to do that. So I was very pleased with that being an operating fund. I am hesitant to fund something that is operations that they don't have a long-term plan for it, because I don't want to get them all get moving on something and then suddenly they get the rug pulled out from under them because the funding's gone. But once the funding is allocated by the end of this year, then they can't come back for more ARPA funds, and I don't want it to become a liability on the city. So I'm just being protective of the city and our ability to sustain these things. But if a group is like, we think we can help bridge us to the next level, or we still have some issues from COVID that we're still dealing with, and here they are, I think that's something that we ought to do. So I could blather on, but I would much rather just kind of get input and answer questions that you might have.
What are some of the projects that have been funded so far, and what did they do with the money?
Yeah, like I said, most of them were capital. The Boys and Girls Club was funded at $1.6 million, so it took the bulk of the funds. That was all capital related to their building, yeah. And in return, they're going to designate areas that we can have city departments have a presence over there, whether it's police, fire, library, parks, to basically extend city hall services to the youth of our community. So that was one. There was the day-by-day shelter. No, excuse me. I ended up using other money, so we didn't give day-by-day anything. Sorry. COTS, over by Father Carr's place to be. That's a housing transition. They got approximately 300 plus thousand. Similarly, Christine Ann Center for their plan to convert the beach building. So that was part of that, about 350,000. The tiny homes project, about 230,000. And I'm just doing it from memory.
Yeah, that's the exact.
But I'm doing
numbers
pretty
are.
good.
Yeah, very good.
You'll get up to 2.7. It won't be 2.275. And then the last one, I mentioned AdvoCap, and then the last one was for the food co-op. Now, actually, that was a little bit different. They had taken out a revolving loan from the city's economic development program, and given some of their financial struggles due to COVID, and they were one of the very few organizations in town that, because of their youth, because of how young they were not eligible for any COVID relief funds from the federal government.
Yeah.
So while some businesses got funds to bridge them, they didn't have that. So I thought it was probably prudent to not run the risk of us actually losing that loan and then damaging the loan fund, which I have other ideas that I will be coming back to you at another time to, I want to convert some of those revolving loan funds into funds directly related to women and minority-owned businesses, but I can't do it if I have a loan that I have to eat. The idea behind that would be they paid off their loan. So that was it. And so
Right.
they
I
were,
know they were struggling during the pandemic.
and without any assistance whatsoever, the fact that, they survived is a testament to their, they're sticking to it. So those are the five
Okay.
that
So
were there.
I thought that Covey got some monies for their new homes. Was there money also from Winnebago County possibly?
Yeah, they did apply, but then when the director in charge of that program left, it lost momentum, and I didn't have any further contact with them.
Okay.
So yeah, but there were a handful. We got many different requests. I mean, there was probably close to $10 million in requests. Now, one of them was for, if you recall, the downtown plaza. That was in the destination study that was done with the city, Convention Visitors Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce. There's a proposal, and you'll still hear about it. You'll hear it'll be coming to a council meeting near you. But that was half of it. But then there was another $5 million in funds. But some of them were not related to COVID, and others. The other thing we did, that I was very proud of, is I brought our community development director, Kelly Nyforth, into meetings, and we delved a little deeper into the applications. In some cases, I gave the application back, and I still plan to do this. It's like, I think you'll have a stronger application if you do this, this, and this. So that's why I was kind of waffling on the date, because I didn't want to, it's like your application frankly wasn't very good, but your explanation of what you want to do makes perfect sense. Here's what you focus on. So
Right.
I coached them through, but with Kelly, there were some groups that qualified for community development block grant funds. Some operating, which I was hesitant to do, but community development block grant is a good program to fund some operations sometimes. So I steered them towards CDBG money. So having Ms. Nyforth there enabled us to make the right connection for
Right,
these
good.
groups. And Kelly has said, you still want me to meet with folks? Absolutely, because my goal isn't to spend the money out, although it is a secondary goal.
Yeah.
My goal is to help the groups that come in and may need it, and that may be a better match for them. And we do have some funds from community development that have turned over, and so we have some funds available that we can help those groups with as well. So we have sent out to everyone who applied previously. The Community Foundation did not give us their list because they don't give out their mailing list, which I appreciate because I don't like people getting my mailing. But they mailed it out on our behalf to any group that they've ever touched base with. I've also done a similar thing with the United Way and a couple other groups that have that typically dole out funds. So Yeah, but any community group, if they're not even on the list, part of me reaching out to DEI is if you're aware of certain community groups, and I'm just, Monk Service Center is certainly that. I'm not just placating me, because me and I talked, and Monk Service Center does wonderful things in the community already, but other groups that we may not know of, because I don't know what I don't know, and
Right.
that's the scary part. If I'm not aware of a group and their needs, any assistance you can provide would certainly be there. And I'm going to be holding some informational sessions the week of February 12th. I believe they're Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're going to do 3 different meetings. One during the day for anybody who is available. One in the evening around this time, and then we're going to do a virtual meeting so that people can look it up at any time. And that'll still be 2 weeks before the deadline. We do have them. We will do them on Oshkosh Media. We typically just do it in the council chambers. I did this when we initially were looking at funds. And we had probably half dozen people. Honestly, the people who showed up were probably the people who were the most successful with the grant application. So
Yeah.
please encourage them for people to come. And if they can't come, watch the Q&A session, and then you can call the office, and I'm happy to help. And if necessary, I'll change the date. If necessary, we'll extend the deadline, but the purpose of the deadline isn't to make it hard and fast. It's really more, what do we have out there? Get our
Right.
pulse on what the needs are.
Yeah,
and
because you
then
can't be making decisions in December.
Right, but if I have to do another go-round in the summer,
Yeah.
I absolutely
Summer, yes.
will do that. But I need to get a better pulse on what's out there. And then the other most frequent question, because everything I just reeled off to you, the lowest amount was 130,000. Somebody said, "Oh, so it's just big numbers." Absolutely not. There was one that, because of turnover in an organization, it was a $12,000 grant, and it warranted. It did warrant. It was directly related to COVID. It was operational-ish, but it wasn't full operational. But it just because of the turnover in the organization. A $12,000 application will get just as much, love and consideration as the larger ones. But we'll have to give out like $12,000. So it'll be tougher to get through the rest of the money. But eventually, I'm going to have to go to council and say, there's X dollars left. And I've heard different suggestions made. I mean, we solicited suggestions way back when in 2021. We had $90 million in suggestions. So there's plenty of suggestions and great ideas out there. It's just that what are we most comfortable with? Council took that $90 million and said, let's do infrastructure this way, non-infrastructure that way. So I still think that waiting was probably a good idea, because the impacts of COVID, the social impacts of COVID, were not, I think they're still coming out. So anyway, happy to answer any more questions you might have.
Well, how does what sort of ties to COVID would it be? For example, how was the Christine Ann Center's expansion tied to COVID?
Christine Ann, they were impacted because their fundraising efforts were completely cut off during COVID. Some of their operational funds come from the court system, and with the courts not completely shut down, but significantly impacted. Now I'm deferring to Lakeisha because she knows the stuff better than I do. But the Christine Ann folks explained how they were impacted from an operational standpoint, which then impacted their fundraising efforts. And there's some belief that with people being home a lot, that
there's a lot
domestic
more.
violence increased as well. So, Boys and Girls Club, the capital wasn't caused by COVID, but I think through COVID, they never closed. And I think that was very impactful with
Right.
council,
Yep.
that they stayed open through thick and thin. So there's a different answer for every single
Right.
recipient. So But I think some of the social issues that we've seen have increased. There was a pretty impassioned plea from members of the community about homelessness, and I think the many faces of homelessness have come out. Things that I never saw, that an application, just one that was discussed and I'm hoping still comes through, was one about teens and young adults that that has just been quietly not talked about, but it's very real. And I've witnessed some of it myself, and I'm just blown away. So those little things that we just, couch surfing is still homelessness.
Yes, it is.
And the stories that I've heard, and there's a group that wants to address it, and it's a combination with Boys and Girls Club and the Community Foundation and some other folks, but so those are ones that I think are the delayed reaction. I mean, the impact on the kids with everything is, I'm sure
They had a
you've all
very
heard different
strange
stories.
high school.
Yeah.
My daughter graduated last June. So,
Yeah.
she had a very different high school experience.
Than other kids,
Yeah.
yeah. I had COVID college kids, and it was just weird. So that impact is there, but, other marginalized groups, I think some of it's quietly, people who were in the service industry, they were out of work, they were into work, then they were absolutely needed, then they weren't needed. I mean, it was the ping pong ball effect of a lot of folks who were in the service industry was a real impact. And there was funds that were there from the feds, but now that they're going, the impact again, it's like, what is the impact? I think you know the answer as well or better than I do. So I am open to ideas, suggestions. I appreciate the questions, but
Right.
you'll have a light bulb will go on tonight, and
Well,
please call me afterwards. I really need to know what groups are out there that
I don't know
may
what
need
group it
assistance.
would be, but certainly one of the continuing issues is childcare.
That's what I've
Something
heard.
can be done childcare wise. And certainly our group has been talking about housing issues this year, so anything in that regard would be of interest to this group.
Childcare, there was all the talk about the housing authority, which I'm sure is why I was anxious to hear that tonight too, because that's gone back and forth, and so that kind of went away. If it comes back, that's a legitimate issue, and that's even being talked about by the economic development folks. So that has wide appeal, but I'm looking for somebody who's built a better mousetrap on that one, because it's not easy, but I would absolutely, be open to that. And I think that's consistent with, some of the goals that were set by council, but has daycare been impacted? Big time it's been impacted. So, I can hang around. I told my wife I'm going to be home till 7, so you can ask
You got me
away.
here the hard.
So, my quick question, so if the current deadline is that March 1st, how soon thereafter do you think it would go before council for approval if there are applicants who would be awarded funds?
I would say by the time the current council's term is done, the first meeting in April, that I would like to get the next round out, and then I'll have an idea of what more solicitation, or if a group is worthy of something, but they just don't have it together, because they gotta have it together in terms of holding themselves accountable, then I'll just leave it open, or resolicit depending on what we get. So I'd like to get them done, over March, so that I could go to council no later than April, to at least, because this council has given me direction on this, and I want to make sure that we at least fulfill some of that.
And the applicants who did not receive funds the first round, they would still be eligible to apply, even if it's a different type
Yeah.
of request, or for
Yeah.
a different purpose or anything, correct?
Both, yeah, all of the above. And I specifically wrote agencies that may have previously applied to the city or another governmental entity. So some people made applications to the county and have been finding out they didn't get anything. We'll take them as well. You're eligible to reapply.
Do
But
they
apply
have
as if
to-
it's a new application,
Yeah.
to start from scratch.
Does it have to be an agency that is physically located in Oshkosh or simply that serves Oshkosh
No, I
residents?
did say Oshkosh-based entities, but but that's a great question, I was asked that. The idea is that you're serving residents of Oshkosh, because these funds were given to the city of Oshkosh. I mean, I jokingly said, if they could be on the moon, but as long as they're serving Oshkosh residents,
Our
we're
community.
okay with that. COTS is an example.
Right, because they're located,
They're,
Up in
technically, their
Appleton,
home base is Appleton.
right, that's
But-
what I thought.
but
So
they
I keep
open-
being surprised when I hear that, down here, I was like, aren't they Appleton? But I do know they now have a.
Yeah,
right,
so that's
location.
one example. I mean,
Okay.
I really think Dragon Boat races could.
But
Entertainment
we
was
didn't- we
definitely
didn't-
affected, and
Oh,
we didn't have
okay. I was
a
gonna say we started
community-based
after.
event for a
Okay.
while because of COVID.
I will
There are
suggest
many,
that,
many-
I will suggest that to the committee.
okay. Where else was I going with that one? Oh, the Oshkosh-based, yeah. And Advocap, you know, they have an office in town, but you could arguably say they're Fond du Lac-based. They're serving Oshkosh residents
Yeah.
very, very clearly. Christine Ann, you know, even though they don't exclusively serve Oshkosh residents, a good
Oh.
part of them is, and we're not funding the entire building, we're funding about 5% of the entire project. So I feel very comfortable that we're meeting the spirit of,
Yes.
Oh,
of
absolutely.
serving the community that way.
And plus, I mean, with the Christine Ann Center during COVID, the current space that they had was a lot of sharing of rooms
Yeah.
with their residents. And so the ability to have this new space with individual apartments, really, if this happens again, the ability, because you had to turn people away who needed that space because you had to like quarantine, or you had one to a room, or you had kids, because the way that it's set up, if there's children, it's a different room, so you're not sharing. And Christine Ann Center was greatly impacted, and those that would go for services couldn't necessarily have them specifically there because of having to isolate or quarantine. And so this current space, I think, will really, that's the individualized space, the
Yeah,
individual
I
space.
forgot about
The
that,
personal
yeah.
space is huge when
Right.
something like that happens, and you still are able to have as many beds available as you do with that personal space. So I really think that's great, especially because also, I mean, it was affecting we have college students with roommates and things like that as well, that use Christine Ann Center. So it was big.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so that's what I have. So please let me know, and as time goes on, may seek some additional input from the group as time goes on, but that's kind of
Good, thank you.
where I'm thinking.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate
welcome.
that.
And if
the
somebody
dates.
wants to attend those meetings, yeah, we
have
just
them
want to
I will do-
repeat them one more
yes.
time.
I should have asked Scott to,
I
we had a screen downstairs. I got the dates here, I just have to,
Yep,
I was would say I'll have to pull up
and
my
they can also
calendar.
probably get information off of our website, I'm guessing.
Yes.
yes, oh yeah, it's all on the website.
There's also social media posts. I saw that.
Yes.
Just helping with the advertising is
Yes.
all.
So don't forget to like those
We're doing
pages.
2 on Friday, February 16th. The daytime session will be at 10 a.m., and then we're doing the virtual information session that afternoon. So I must have it the following week. So the 16th at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And then, don't have the other date. I'm sorry. There's one in the evening, and I just can't. Oh, that's because I had it, oh, it's on the 15th, on Thursday, February 15th at 6 p.m., and that'll be right here. That's it.
Well, thank you very much.
All right.
You're welcome.
Good, good.
Hey, thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. I got time, I'll
Next.
hang around.
We have the roundtable discussion or information on related events.
If you haven't heard, the Dragon Boat Festival will be September 14th. Same place.
Same wonderful place, right here in the city of Oshkosh.
Yes. Well, assuming it gets approved, all the people have to approve it, but that's the date we're going for.
Okay.
There. I'm not on the primary
Mhm.
committee this year, so it's like, that's the only thing I know is, right now is the date.
All right, wonderful.
Any other ones I have?
And staff's reserve that. Make sure the names is not booked. You got dibs.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
The others? No. All right, outstanding items.
So the only thing on the future agenda for council is they've got their strategic planning meeting on March 1st, I believe it was. So that's coming up, but that's future meetings for the council agenda.
It's the 4th.
Oh, March 4th, I'm sorry. I'm like, yep, it's not on there.
Oh,
There we go.
it's like, oh no.
March 4th.
I would have missed it.
Breakfast.
I was like, it's on the 1st? No, it's on the 4th.
It's on the 4th, sorry.
But the 1st is the first day of Women's History Month, so
Okay.
just so you're aware.
And then future agenda items, obviously, we've reached out to Habitat for Humanity, but now, of course, we'll also be looking to reschedule the housing authority. So we'll see who will work out for next month.
I think we should also place on the agenda, recruiting committee members. I don't think we have an alternate space open.
Marina just took the second alternate space, I believe. I can double check, but I think all of our spots are now filled.
So, and I believe that council may want to look at if there's a need to appoint new if we have inactive members. And so that may be something that we should at least discuss, make sure we're letting people know that they can apply, put that on the agenda.
Okay,
And,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yes, we're always, for all committees, boards, and commissions, we're always accepting applications. So if anyone is interested in this committee or any of our other committees, they can certainly go to the city website and see all of the committees, boards, commissions available and apply for those. If there isn't an opening today, there could be one in the near future. So definitely something I would encourage people to look at and consider applying for. But yes, we can certainly talk more about it at the next meeting.
Yes. All right, that would be the end of today's agenda. So I'll take a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Second.
Oh, sorry. I heard
I
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Perfect, all right. Thank you, everyone.